So I'm James Cowie, a technical team lead at Session Digital in the UK. I'm lucky enough to have worked on two of the first UK Magento 2 sites that went live, and also working with our L&D team to help us understand and train our staff on Magento 2 a little bit more. And outside of work, I co-host MageCast with Alan, and we're also starting the Mage Roundtable. So if anyone wants to get involved tomorrow lunchtime, we'll be talking random nonsense. So, continuous integration. Continuous integration was first named and proposed by Grady Booch in his 1999 method called the Booch method. It was adopted as part of extreme programming, and it says that we should integrate with our repo many times a day, even upwards of 10 times a day. So in theory, we shouldn't have to worry about any syntax errors, failed tests. Continuous integration should be our early warning system. And some of the benefits are that instead of having to have this phase at the end of a project where we're integrating our feature branch into our work, we've been practicing that all the way along. We can say goodbye to the long integration, those merge conflicts. We've got increased visibility for greater communication. So we've got boards in each of our offices, so we can see the status of a build, whether it's passing, whether it's failing. It allows us to talk to people a little bit more and open the communication channels and visibility for how well a project's health status is. And it's far easier to catch issues faster and nip them in the bud. So because we're integrating really, really fast, many times a day, we don't have to worry about that big complex part at the end, or does my feature work okay with this feature? We're running tests, we're running our static analysis. We know straight away that the problem's there, and it's so much easier to fix a problem that's smaller than a problem that's really, really big, because there's so many more places where it could have touched different parts of the code or affected many different places. And the confidence that we're building, we know that we're building from a solid foundation. So it's tested, static analysis, it's in a good place instead of us not knowing about the health of our project at any one time. And again, because we're reducing the integration problems, we're able to deliver our software a lot faster. We're not having to spend time fixing bugs or actually playing with the source code to get rid of errors, syntax errors. It's there, it allows us to deploy a lot faster. And actually, from a development perspective, for us to do continuous integration, there's not that much more that we need to do that we wouldn't be doing already. So we initiate our CI process. If we're working completely offline, that could be a Git hook that runs some of our PHP tools that we've pulled from Composer. So we could run mess detector, copy-paste detector. That will run the tests on save if we're doing a watch or when we do our pre-commit hooks. And each one of the tools is actually going to generate some output for us to say whether it was a pass or fail. If it's copy-paste, then it'll highlight the files that have changed. And it's our early warning system that we can actually run offline, or we can run in our continuous integration servers. And some of the software as a service tools, Circle CI, Scrutinizer, even add their own layer of toolage to this, so we can get a code score, we can get automated pull requests sent back. That's all taken online and more bespoke to the service that you want to use. So continuous delivery and deployment. So continuous delivery is a software engineering approach in which teams produce software in short cycles, ensuring that the software can be reliably released at any time. It aims at building, testing, and releasing software faster and more frequently. This approach helps reduce the cost of time and risk in delivering changes, allowing more incremental updates to applications in production. A straightforward and repeatable deployment process is important for continuous delivery. Now, while reading through that, it hit home, and I started to think about where some of those phrases and sentences I'd heard before, and it core to what we actually do at Session with the Agile Manifesto. So short cycles sounds a lot like Agile sprints. So short cycles, Agile sprints, felt a little bit the same to me. Reliably released. One of the Agile Manifesto lines is working software over comprehensive documentation. And faster, frequently, in my mind, came to responding to changeover following a plan. So to me, if we're following Agile well, or not to the letter, but we're following Agile, then we're part way there to actually getting continuous delivery working. And some of the benefits of continuous delivery are accelerated time to market. Because we can push code faster, push code into production or UAT faster, we can actually get feedback a lot faster than we would do just by throwing a big archive up there. Building the right product is really important in this day and age. People are used to seeing updates really, really fast. And because we want to build the right product, we can get feedback faster. We can put the product in front of stakeholders, people with the business value that they're trying to solve, or real end user people, to make sure that we're building the right software. We can take it offline, we can continue building the features. Improve productivity and efficiency. Because we're not having to spend as much time debugging our integrations, we've been practicing it all the way through. We can be more productive in getting our code live and getting it in front of end users. Reliable releases. It's so frustrating when you push a piece of code live and you've got conflicts or even bugs which could have been caught in earlier pipeline servers. Improve product quality. Because we're continually testing our code with automated tools, we should feel a lot more secure in the work that we're actually doing. And if we get all of that right, a better platform, faster releases, then hopefully customer satisfaction increases because they're getting the products that hopefully add value to what they're doing. It solves their needs, and it's getting there a lot faster than what we used to do. So let's take a look at what the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment are. So at first I thought it was one of the two, the same word for the same process, but actually if you look at what they are, it breaks down slightly different. So both continuous delivery and deployment start with us finishing a piece of work, our code's done. We run all of our unit tests, we do all of our integration tests. This is all automated in this part of the pipeline. We automate our acceptance tests, but where it stops is that using continuous delivery, we actually manually deploy to production. So it's a human effort to say this code goes from here to live. Whereas if we're doing continuous deployment, it's automated from the minute we finish our work to the minute it goes in front of customers. It's a continuous deployment, all automatically pushed live. And this got actually really, really interesting for me because it's rare that we get a chance to reflect on the work that we've done from past projects, so from Magento 1 and Magento 2. And when we embarked upon some of our Magento 2 projects, I decided that I wanted to take a look at how we have been deploying projects and how all this worked in the past. And just to see what we could improve. Was there anything that we needed to improve now we're taking on a brand new platform? And it all starts by actually being able to put our work in front of somebody. So our pipeline servers. We always start with a QA server. So the QA server is where us developers can push code for our QA team internally to start looking at our features, making sure that they're happy, all of our edge cases are met, and that it passes our QA process. We tend to get the client involved when we get to UAT. We release all of our features onto UAT, and they can make sure that, yeah, indeed, this is the feature that they wanted. And then once the client's happy, and all of our tests are still passing, we can push it live in front of real customers. So if we look at how this looks like from a code point of view and how the features travel, developers in the work, we finish X number of features, we schedule a release and push that onto UAT. Client says, yep, that's great, I'm happy. We then schedule another release to go live. And that got me really, really interested here because there was a time involved, the time from when we put features on QA to when we could actually put them onto UAT. And again, there was another little, this time from going from UAT to live. Sometimes it could be really small, sometimes it felt like it could be quite a large amount of time, depending on what features we were actually developing. And it's not always easy to get hold of the client at times. They've got their own business to run, their own priorities. Online is just one of the many channels that they're responsible for. So getting them to approve our feature or just check that it was okay can vary in the time. But what is time? Time varies from person to person to project. But time for me is agile. We're working in an agile process. So we measure our sprints in time. We tend to work in a 2-week sprint where we can commit as a team to delivering X number of features in each of these sprints. And we always focus on getting our commitment delivered and released and deployed in a timely fashion during that sprint. And there's an argument to say that is our sprint time too long? So we first started many years ago with Waterfall, where a project length could be years. Agile brought us down to 2 weeks, or however, 2 weeks tends to be about the number that we look at. Maybe that's too long for a release of software, but that's an argument for another day. And what I found really interesting was when we look at how this flows in our source code. So how do the features go from the 2 week, how do we push them all along? So just so that we're all on the same page, for this presentation, our sprints are going to be 2 weeks. And then the time from a client seeing the work on UAT to going live could be 2 weeks, depending on how busy they are. I'd like to think that it's a lot less time, but there's an unknown amount of time from them saying yes to us putting it live. How does this actually look from source code point of view then? So we know that we're building these features, pushing them along in our Jira boards, but what does source code look like? What is it that we're interested in? So we use Git, and you can think of the red line as being our main line, and we fork off to create a release branch. So I've worked on 4 features today, or this sprint. They've all passed peer review. All the unit tests and integration tests are still passing, so I merge them into develop. The time comes where once it's past QA and on UAT, the client's happy. So our release branch that we've crafted from all the features that they're happy with can go to live. So we merge a release branch into our master branch, and that gets deployed onto production servers, and hopefully the client's happy. Now, all these features aren't individual feature branches that we're taking and merging at each point of time. Those features are merged into the single branch, so it's one single branch that we're working with. Where it breaks down is the day before you go live and the client says, that feature that you wanted, I don't really want that anymore. So we can't automatically just deploy our master branch to live or merge our release branch into live because it's a flat branch now. It's got all the features in that we were hoping to push live. So we can't just say, I want these features to go live and not that one, because it's all in the same branch. I couldn't really find a suitable or safe for work picture that showed how to do a reverse merge or a rebase. Mainly it was me crying, and nobody wants to see that. So it gets us into the mindset of having to cherry pick features out, which adds time again, time to deploy. So we actually have to go into our release management mindset now and start taking features out of that branch and being careful, because there's so many times where we're, as developers, working on so many things at the same time, we inadvertently couple our feature branches together. So we remove feature X that the client no longer wants, but we have to make sure that all of our tests run again so that feature Y that they still want didn't rely on a piece of functionality, a setup script or a line of code that's now going to break the entire release process. So in theory, we're actually back to QA to get our process, our QA people going, looking at the work again to make sure that they're still happy. And what did I really want improved by all of this? I mean, to be honest, this is the way that I've worked well before I was employed by Session, and it was the way that I felt it should just be. And having the time to actually look at what I wanted to do better was really good. And when I looked at all the things, like what did I want better? Did I want an easier way to push code live? Did I want a more manageable way of making the release not at 4 o'clock in the morning? And what I really wanted was better feedback, or actually faster feedback. And I started looking about feedback. What is feedback? and feedback time. And I sort of coined this phrase, feedback time, which is the time started minus the time that I first get the feedback gives me my feedback time. And I started to plot in a little Excel spreadsheet all the features that I've been working on recently. And when I got feedback from our QA team, when I got feedback from our automated tests, be that unit, functional or integration, and when I got feedback from external parties or people within the business where this feature really mattered to, and actual real end users, just to make sure that the business people's assumptions on what people wanted was actually true. And it was interesting to start seeing how the feedback time varied and how it impacted the work that I was going to continue doing for the project. And why did I really want feedback time to be improved? Well, cognitive load. I can only keep so much work in my mind at one time before the memory chip flushes and I forget where I am actually at that point in time. The project flow. So if we just automatically push a lot of work live in one big go, we're creating bottlenecks. We really want to keep our project flow nice and linear, a nice steady flow of work from A to go live. Otherwise, we're putting undue pressure on our QA teams, our UAT teams, and we end up with backlogs of work in the different parts of our project process, which is never really good because we want to keep it going nice and fast to meet our commitments that we've all agreed to. And really, validation. Validation is so important for us as developers and the businesses that we work in to make sure that we're actually delivering the software that matters for people. But it's also really good to get validation from the end users to make sure that we've interpreted it right, it's matching their needs, and it's solving real-world problems. And there's quite a lot of people that we get feedback from. So when I first sat down and thought, who do I want to get feedback from? QA. I want to get feedback from QA because they're the only people that are going to tell me I've broken some code. But actually, there was a lot more people involved. I wanted to get feedback, yes, from our QA team because they're really good at finding edge cases and also really good at breaking my code. But I wanted to get feedback from our team lead. Does it actually meet the standards that we're wanting to adhere to? Does it not only meet our coding standards, but does the code make sense? Is it smart code? Is it decoupled code? Does it match what the rest of the project team's working on? The key stakeholders in the business, is it actually solving the problem that they wanted me to solve? Have I interpreted their brief correctly? Do I understand their business enough to make sure that this feature actually matches what they want? And feedback from real users. It's very rare that I actually thought about the end user, the person that was using my software. But the more you actually think about the feedback that you can get, both directly and indirectly, looking at Google Analytics or actually doing end user testing, is really eye-opening and quite beneficial for us as developers to get earlier and faster in the process. And then I started to break it down. So what is internal feedback and what is external feedback? Because they're both really important. And it made me think about a book that I read a long time ago where it talks about internal software versus external software in testing and how they're not mutually exclusive. There's different forces that touch internal feedback to what we think about as external feedback. And in internal feedback, I started to look at the feedback that I actually wanted. So I wanted, obviously, code analysis to make sure that it was simple code. It was code that could move forward with me in the project. It was our acceptance criteria to make sure that this checkbox could take X number of characters or the background color wasn't pink. Exploratory testing from our QA team, just to make sure that it still adhered to date validation. All the stuff that's internal and obviously regression testing was what I classified as internal feedback, stuff that mattered to me from our internal point of view. And then external feedback actually looked more about the UI. So in the feedback process, external feedback for people was, how does it look? How many people are actually using this feature or are wanting this feature in live? How many requests are we getting per day for this? How many people are 404 in or moving on to other software projects or other software platforms that deliver the feature that we're not delivering at the moment? How are people using the feature if we've already got it implemented at the moment? And does this feature actually solve a problem? Are they coming back? How many errors are being generated? How dissatisfied are end users or external people? And then I started to look at how long it'd take for me to get feedback from those people. So theoretically in this world, we're doing a 2-week sprint. I've committed the ultimate sin and I'm building one massive feature in this 2 weeks. So there's a theoretical time where I'm not going to get any feedback from QA to UAT for about 2 weeks because it's one big feature that I can't split into little stories and deliver incremental value. So there's potentially 2 weeks there where I'm going to get no feedback at all. And then from the clients seeing it in UAT to going live, they're all on holiday, it's summertime and it's a busy period, so there's about 2 weeks there where the stakeholders have all managed to get around and do the release process and check that they're happy with the feature. And that's quite a lot of time. So what options did I see? I read a few books, consulted with the experts that we've got in our company, looked on Twitter and around, and started to see what options were there that could solve some of the feedback problems that I saw. And the first one was feature branches. So feature branches appeared quite a lot in continuous delivery and deployment books that I was reading. And a lot of you are probably used to using feature branching on your projects, whether you're using continuous delivery and deployment already, or whether you're just using the Git branching methodology. So as a quick recap for anyone that doesn't use it, we've got a develop branch, which is our main line. That's where all of our work goes into, whether we've got a master for deploying or not. And every time we pick up a feature, we branch off develop, work on our feature branch, remembering to integrate up to 10 times per day to make sure that we're not going to get any nasty surprises when we try and integrate back. And then we merge back into develop once that feature's been finished. So that means that at the end of our 2 weeks or at any point in time, develop contains all the feature complete features that we've worked on at any one point in time. And some of the rules that I saw around continuous delivery and feature branching was that our branch that we promote to be mainline, develop or master or whatever we want to name that, is always deployable. It should always contain feature complete features and it should contain tests. We can't do continuous delivery or deployment without automated tests because it's not automated otherwise. We need unit tests, integration tests, functional tests, and especially in Magento 2, that became a lot easier with the MTF and the built-in framework that allows us to do all of those testing a lot better. So I approached it a little bit different thanks to the help of some of our clever guys in session. And I've got our mainline branch and I'm looking to create release 1. And what helped me get feedback faster from the client was that we used Docker, but it could be any containerized platform really. I create feature 1, which is the main orange line at the top, and it automatically created a new environment of feature.project.pipeline.com. So I'm working on my feature. As soon as I create the pull request or the first push, I can pass that URL to anybody, whether it be end customers if we wanted to, probably not, but I could give it to our QA team and people to actually start giving me feedback on that work while I'm working on it, feedback on that feature while I'm working on it. And at the same time, I've got Bob on the project who creates feature 2. So we've got 2 branches as well as our main environment where we're working on getting feedback, integrating daily, and we can get validation that that's the right thing, also that it can go into our release. So we finish our work and we decide that we want to create a release version 1. And because of the continuous delivery pipeline that I was working on, that created uat.project.pipeline.com with all those features that we've rolled in. Some of the disadvantages to doing this was that it was quite a manual process for me to actually craft those branches. And because the feature branches were kept alive until the point that we wanted to merge them into our release branch, they suffered from what is known as feature rot. Feature branches that live for a long time can get forgotten about, or people forget about the branch that actually lives there, so you're not integrating back into them. If you forget about the branch for maybe a day or 2 days, develop can get so far forward that it's hard to integrate those features back in without a lot more effort. You've got merge conflicts. And especially in Magento 1, maybe not so much now in Magento 2, but the module version number was always a cause of congestion for me with modules adding to and taking over the module number. But some of the advantages I found was that we no longer had to deal with reverse merging quite as often. And it was actually quite clear to see what features were going to go into a release at any one point in time. Instead of having to look at the squashed history inside of a develop branch, because we were putting those releases or those feature branches into a release, I could quite easily say at any one point in time, feature 1, 2, and 3 are going to make up this release. That was great, but I wanted an option. It's always good to be able to compare to possible workflows. And feature toggles came into play. Feature toggles, to me, are really cool. I got really excited by what a feature toggle was. And in its basic form, a feature toggle is just a way of enabling or disabling a feature. It's a logical switch in code instead of a logical switch in source code. So no longer do we have to think about putting our feature branches into the main line. We just wrap our code in a logical statement and we can either show or hide that feature. So again, me and Bob are working on our project. I can create my feature, the orange one. Bob can create his green one. Every time that we integrate or we say that our feature is feature complete, it goes back into mainline, but by default, all of our features are turned off. So it doesn't matter if our feature isn't ready for a client to see because it's not been approved. We can keep deploying that to any environment that we want because it's not going to be seen. It's hidden until an admin or somebody goes in and actually enables that feature for us. And feature toggles actually come in a varying degree of actually classification. So depending on how long the feature toggle lasts for and how much it's used, it can even be either be known as a release toggle. So a release toggle tends to live for a couple of days, maybe a week. That's where we'll keep that toggle in the admin area or keep it in code. So we'll class that as a release toggle. It's just for that one deployment or that one feature, we wanted to put the release toggle in there. If it starts to last for months, maybe a little bit, weeks to months, we call that an ops toggle or an operational toggle where it's more strategic to the project that we're working on. And then you've got the experimental toggles where we're not quite sure whether this feature wants to exist yet. So we're going to experiment with it for X number of hours per day in the basic form because we can either turn it on or off. We're going to, at peak times on a Saturday, turn this feature on, and then we're going to turn it back off. So that's going to stay for a little bit of time, more than we would do for a release toggle. We won't refactor that feature toggle out of our code. And then we've got permission toggles, which I tend to just see as being our ACL rules of who can see this feature. And that is all it looks like in our code. We just wrap all of the code that executes our feature in is enabled. I mean, we are adding a bit of syntactical sugar around it with the helper of is enabled, but we're just saying if this is enabled, show it, otherwise don't. Just keep it hidden. And some of the disadvantages about using feature toggles are people see it as being technical debt. Because our source code starts to look, it takes on more complexity because we're adding conditional statements to our normally clean code. There's a little bit more extra code and configuration because we not only have to think about our feature as adding the feature toggle, the if statement around it, we've got more work there to think about. And also the configuration. So unless you've got a module built that can actually handle that configuration, you need to add a system.xml file to make sure you can turn it on or off. And JavaScript and CSS isn't as easy as just wrapping it in an if-then-else statement. JavaScript, there's solutions that we can look at that are all around versioning on the body or node, or we can look at versioning of JavaScript. And CSS gets more complex where we can maybe look at versioning some of our DOM nodes. So for each of the structural elements that we've got on the page that build up a feature, we can actually tag those nodes with a version number. But then the CSS is actually increasing in selector depth. And again, is it technical debt? For me, I personally prefer to have the technical debt in code than having feature branches that rot, because it's easier to remove an if statement than it is to integrate a load of merge conflicts. And the benefits are we can deploy at any time. We don't have to worry about a deployment at 4 o'clock in the morning because in theory, all of the features are disabled by default. We just keep deploying. We can just put it all live. A/B testing, we can actually say that because the feature toggles to start with are quite, they're still in the code, we've not refactored them out. We can say, right, we're going to put this live for X number of hours, and then we're going to put it back to what it was. And we can start looking at analytics to say, have we improved it? Have we made the experience better? Have we made it worse? It's really easy to revert. We can just disable the feature and then pull that code back out. And what I found actually quite cool was the client engagement. They actually like being involved in turning the features on. Instead of us being this black box where we take code and push it live, they can say, yeah, actually, I am ready for this feature to go live. And they feel empowered that they can turn the feature back off if they wish to. And I say our solution, the solution that I saw in my mind wasn't maybe what you'd read in a book, but it took into account all of the best practices and principles that we're taught, which was a bit of BDD, behavior-driven development, writing agile user stories, exploring the business value, some of the ceremonies, so example workshops, feature toggles featured quite heavily in it because I really do think they are cool. Feature branching still live there just because of the workflow that I felt we needed to take. And obviously TDD, we can't do any of this without test-driven development. So why did I think that BDD should feature so heavily? Well, by engaging and having a conversation with customers and end users, we could actually check that it was value to them. Instead of us just being given a brief and going ahead and working on it, we could continue to have a conversation. Is this what you want? Why is it? Can you give me an example of that? So they were validating it in their own mind quite early on in the project that it was the feature that they wanted. We can understand the value, the intent, and we actually started to, I understood the why of what they wanted. User stories in agile sense were really important into this process that I saw as being my continuous delivery because they became our acceptance criteria for the QA team to look at. We actually all started to think about the scenarios that were going to make up a feature. And it was a form of validation, especially for the QA team, of the work that was of the feature that was going to be developed. Business value was a concept that I haven't really explored too much in the past and really want to explore more and feel that it's crucial to this pipeline. But it was all about what value does this story have. And the value was important because it helped me try and understand how fast do I want the feedback. If it's a piece of business value that's so critical to the client and they feel really passionate about it, then I want to get feedback really early to make sure that I understand the problem that I'm trying to solve. And what impact does it have? Is it going to be a really big piece of work that I want to get more analytical data in there? How am I going to measure what impact it had? And that got me thinking about what type of metrics I need to get for the continuous delivery. And how measurable is it? How do I know if my feature has actually met that business value and has been successful? The example workshops were really great because, we all hate that day on deployment day where the client says, that's not ready, can you pull it out the release? Or, no, actually, that story isn't the one that I wanted. But I see an example workshop or the Three Amigos in Agile sense as being the final chance for them to pull a story, or us to pull a story, because it's not quite ready to be worked on. We've not got all the information. Do we understand it enough? So if they don't quite understand the story or the feature that's going to be developed, then maybe it's not quite ready to be worked on. So we're reducing the risk of us having to pull that feature back out. Feature toggles, it needed the admin configuration. It was just a no-brainer for me. I wanted the feature toggles to be present so that we could deploy at any time. It was great being able to push code live many times per day. In one of the projects that I was working on where we're using feature toggles, we were actually deploying during one of the demos to a client, which they weren't aware of. We just wanted to push more features live. It didn't have any impact on the front end. So we just deployed while we were doing a demonstration. Obviously, it slowed down slightly because the cache cleared, but it was not a detrimental effect to the website. Feature branches still were really important because I wanted to see the visibility of the features that were being worked on. We wanted to make sure that even though we can disable features, that we wanted to be able to keep a feature complete mainline branch. But feature branches had to be short-lived. I didn't want to see feature branches going on for many days, leading into weeks or months, because then the integration back into the mainline was really difficult. And yeah, test-driven development. Automation is one of the key principles to all of this. If we don't have our unit tests, integration tests, using both PHP spec and now in Magento 2 PHP unit, we can't have confidence that our build is passing and moving from A to B along the pipeline. Some of the tools that we used to make this possible were obviously GitHub and Git. GitHub provided all the automated hooks that we could tap into to make sure all of our pieces of the puzzle fitted together. In Magento 2, because it was quite a new platform and we didn't have time, I didn't have time at that moment to build a fully fledged module, we just used system config. It's so easy in Magento 2 to create a feature toggle module and put a system.xml in there. Every new feature you build, just put another yes, no in there. It's got the helper for is enabled, and you pass the text string over. And the helper model could live with the project. I mean, the good news is that we're now working on a better feature toggle module for Magento 2, where it's got more advanced features. Not only can it just do yes, no, but we can start to look at filtering by IP address range, so that you could turn it on for a client site, as well as customer segmentation groups, because that's built into Magento 2. We can say that we're going to turn this feature on for our VIPs or our B2B customers. We can turn features on or off to make sure before we roll it out, some of the inbuilt Magento 2 functionality just works. We use Scrutinizer. There is Circle CI. There's quite a lot of different platforms that we can use for this, but that ran my static analysis. So we could run it locally, but because it's in the cloud, Scrutinizer was making sure that the code adhered to all of its standards, and it could even create the pull request for me. It ran all of my tests. It can run, if you're in the paid for version, it can run whatever test you want it to run, and it'll give you the feedback, and it'll tell you whether it can be merged into master or not. It's doing the integration. We use Scrutinizer in part as a deployment mechanism, but we also use CodeShip so that when feature branches were merged in, or when anything touched on master or the release branch, it'd deploy it to the different pipeline servers or live automatically. And what I'd say from my investigation so far and my journey into continuous integration, delivery and deployment, some of the key reading that I've read are, without a doubt, Jez Humble's book on continuous delivery. It's bedtime reading if you've got insomnia. Continuous integration is another one. I mean, they look really great propping up your doors or your office, but they are invaluable books. They're timeless books that have actually been around for many, many years. None of the stuff that I've just explored or will be exploring is new, because it's all in these books that has been developed from the Smalltalk communities many years ago. One of the newer books was Continuous Delivery by a company called Made. It's quite a short book, but it's actually really interesting, and was one of the books that actually made me look more into the previous two more and understand the features and the benefits of all. Release It is a great book, can't recommend it enough. All about actually getting the code out there faster, looking at different deployment strategies. That was a great book. And yeah, I mean, if you read through those and online, it's still a massive field to look into, but it's getting easier in Magento 2. So, I mean, my module that I'm working on is going to be on my GitHub, James Cowie. You can follow me on Twitter, and I've only just scratched the surface of what we did and what we tried to do, but yeah, just shout me if you've got any questions. I'm always happy to help out.